us all together. Lord, we gather in your name as children of a sovereign God. Forever we proclaim, to God be all glory.
Well, good morning. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October the 28th, 2025. Welcome to episode 486 of The Thinking Theologian as we continue our journey through the scriptures. So today we read Luke chapter 12 and 13. The title of today is Our Word Will Not Stay Secret Forever. The focal scripture is in Luke chapter 12, verse 3. And this is what it says. It says, therefore, whatever you have said in the dark will be heard in the light, and what you have whispered in an ear in private rooms will be proclaimed on the housetops. So I've said it before, and I will say it again, that not being your true self in private and publicly is a problem. And so you need to be the same in private and in public. This really applies to believers because it is an issue of character. I've been around people who would sing the praises of others to their face, but behind their backs would degrade them and ridicule them. I want to clarify too, I've even said something to these people and it never turns out well because then they turn their wrath on me as an individual. And so I've been around people who would sing the praises of others to their face and behind their backs would degrade them and ridicule them. I've seen lost people act that way. And even a believer, I've only ever seen one believer that was just over the top with it, a professing believer, who was in a position of prominence do that same thing. And so just know how damaging that is to everybody that is involved, because it really is a problem. So I'm not sure why this sin gets a free pass in our culture, and it really does, especially in church culture. It gets a free pass. The way people talk one way and do another way and talk in secret one way and publicly another way. It seems to get a free pass even when people know they're doing wrong. However, this action causes many people to lose respect for believers and the faith because they're like, you're a fake, you're a hypocrite. And this is what this context of the verse is speaking on. So in today's reading, Jesus calls out religious hypocrites. He's like, you say all these things, that you're doing all the right things, but yet what you say and what you speak, it doesn't match up with who you claim to be and who you claim to belong to. He lets them know that whatever they say behind closed doors will eventually come to light. The things you whisper to other people will be proclaimed for all to hear. Jesus was specifically using the Pharisees as an example to point out their hearts. He wanted his hearers to be aware that words matter and secrets never stay secret forever, even as much as you try to get it to be. So I really wish people understood the damage they cause to others by the words they speak. I was once around a church where gossip was almost a sport. It was almost like this is what we do for fun. They would gossip. They would say certain things. People would act one way publicly, another way privately. People would go around. And when I say this, please know that a lot of churches, no church is perfect. But a church who has a culture like this is a troubled church. And so I was once around a church where gossip was almost a sport. Like I said, they would say one thing to people's faces and go around and say something else behind their backs. So people go, oh, how great they were, how much they loved them, and turn around and talk about them, about how sorry they were and how they didn't like them, or they didn't agree with decisions they were making, or whatever it may be. They would just talk about them. And it was really difficult to be around these people when they behave that way. Now, obviously it wasn't everybody, but it was enough where it really permeated the culture. It even affected the adults and the students. And so this issue was not only tolerated in the church amongst the members, but it was consistently done by the pastor himself. This individual would attack people's spiritual condition behind closed doors. He would call them names and belittle the church he served. About how he didn't like them. The church didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't lead themselves. They needed him because he was Moses. He compared himself to Moses. That they couldn't do anything without him, and he needed to be the one making all the decisions. And people in leadership, he would demean behind closed doors, and then go out publicly and put his arm around them, how much he cared about them, how much he loved them. even seeing how he would act one way and then another way. And so this individual would attack them in so many ways, and then would publicly say the opposite to win favor from people who were influential. And he would say things to win them and win them over, and to win them to his side, to an agenda, and to what he was trying to get across. And people in the community knew it, and people around who have met this individual know it, and they're appalled by what's happening. But unfortunately, the church where these events happened took place, the church won't deal with it, and this person won't deal with it, and sin has been allowed to fester. And it's almost like a bad, perfect marriage mixed together, where only these two groups of people can have a relationship together because of how toxic they are to one another, because words matter, and neither one will hold each other accountable and do the right thing. And it's very evident, even though they have a facade of what looks good, internally, it's not. And so the purpose of today's devotional is to highlight that nothing we say will stay hidden. One day that church and pastor will give an account for anything they've said behind people's backs. And there's many things that have been done and been said that have to be addressed. And if those people don't go ask for forgiveness for the things they've done, then they're going to have to give an account in a way that I would not want to give an account for. And please hear me, I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means. But I can tell you right now that if I've ever talked about somebody's behind it, I've always went to them and apologized and addressed it, because this is one of the things that God's really convicted me over, is that you got to be the same publicly and privately, that you cannot act that way and do that way and behave that way. So again, they will be held accountable to both the church and the pastor that was in charge, who was leading the church. So it will be revealed to everyone in the end at some point, either on this earth it will be revealed, or one day before the Lord himself, he will reveal everything that was said and done behind closed doors, and the evil intent behind people's hearts and their actions and what they said. And so this also holds true for you and for me. We're not escaping from this also. I'm not throwing this one church and leader under the bus. I'm throwing myself here under the mercy that I will be held accountable for everything I've done that I have not dealt with and sought forgiveness for and dealt with. And so our speech that we believe has been hidden will be revealed before everyone, all of us, every single person, you, me, everybody will have it revealed. Our goal is to always say what we mean and mean what we say. It doesn't matter if we are in private or in public. We cannot act and speak two separate ways in two separate places, because it means you're fake. It just means you're fake. And I don't ever want to be as a fake person. And one way I handle that, when I'm really struggling with people or a situation, I clam up a lot, because I don't know how to be fake in front of people. And people have picked up on this before. They'll ask why I'm quiet, or why I don't talk around certain people, or why I withdraw from conversations from people and don't say anything, because I can't deal with fake. Because for me to address the situation the way my spirit leads me to, I would have to be rude and do things that is difficult for me to have, because I believe I would cross over the line of being judgmental and mean to people, and that's not where I want to go. So oftentimes I'll just withdraw. There was a situation where not long ago I ran into some people where they were doing things, and I know they've said things and how they gossiped and did things that I needed to address and I want to address. But one, it wasn't the setting to do it, and two, I wasn't going to be really not very nice about it, because of the things that were done and the things they said they thought were in secret, but they were exposed. And that is a problem that must be addressed. And so our words, we must understand that it doesn't matter how upset or frustrated we are about a situation. We have no right to speak to people that way. Our words matter. Our words bring life, or they bring death. So I ask you today, would you be okay with your private conversations being made public? If not, there's a major problem. So how do you speak about others when nobody else is around? Would you be a life giver or a life destroyer? So everything we do represents the gospel, and we must be aware of that. And if not, then we are causing issues. And today's a little bit longer, and I want you to hear me when I say this too. I'm not just trying to be negative about the church. There are so many great things about the church and people in the church and things that are happening, but we also must address the things that we see that are often not called out because of reasons because we don't want to be offensive to other people. This is an issue of the hypocrisy of what people say and what people do that turns people away. That is easy fix. But the fix doesn't happen because to fix the problem means you have to confront people. And it's often people who do this, the people who believe they have authority and can get away with it because they've gotten away with it for so long, because this cultural Christianity is allowed to continue, and it causes so many issues. And again, like that church and that pastor that I'm speaking about, the things that did this, they actually think they get away with it, but there's actually a community and a broad base of people that see it and have no respect for this group that does things, even though they think they're getting away with it, they're actually not. But one day God will expose, either publicly for everyone to see, or what's going on. And we need to be aware of that what we think is done in secret, our speech and how we act, it is going to be exposed one day. And this is why how we speak privately and publicly should always be the same, and we shouldn't be any different. Even if I'm talking about something that's confidential, that I would never say to anybody else, if someone were to ever overhear that conversation, the people or the tone of my heart and how I'm addressing it should be one of respect and love and mercy, in a way where I'm seeking their best, because God can do a work in their life, not to demean or destroy an organization or a group of people. And anyone who does that, in my opinion, is biblically an unbeliever, because they violate the basic core tenets of what it is to be a born-again believer. And if you can do this and not be convicted over it, then I believe Scripture clearly teaches that you're an unbeliever and you need to be treated as such. And I pray for those people to get saved, because you cannot act and behave this way with no conviction and still claim to know Jesus. And I know this went a little longer today, but I feel like it's something we need to address, because too often in our churches, we allow this to go and we don't hold people accountable to this. And we allow the destruction of young believers, whether in actual literal age or in their spiritual age, to witness these things, and we don't call it out. And this is why church discipline is such a big issue, and it needs to be addressed and done in a proper way, which is often not, because we don't want to make people uncomfortable in where they are, because we're afraid they may leave the church, when oftentimes that is sometimes the best thing that can happen in situations like that, because it need to be seen that how you're behaving is like an unbeliever. It is not like a born-again child of God who's had their life changed. And again, I know a hard conversation, but one I think we must have and one we must address. And so tomorrow, I plan on reading Luke chapter 14 through 16. We'll get close to the end of the book of Luke. So thank you for being with us today. Have a good day.